I know this looks pretty crazy on here, but it's really, really simple. And the reason I'm shooting this video is because a lot of students and graduates and job seekers in general, they're struggling to get interviews. They're struggling to convert those interviews into offers, and they're wasting a lot of time. They're wasting money, and it doesn't have to be like that. One of the biggest mistakes they make is this thing that I'm going to describe today. You know, if you're a student or a grad and you're looking for a job, this video, this framework could actually change everything. So this thing, let's just call it the time circle. This is like how you spend your time each day. Say you've got 24 hours in a day. Probably about 7 to 8 of those hours is just you sleeping in bed. So if you've got 24 hours in a day, you've instantly lost 7, 8 hours or whatever it is to sleep. Then you've got these other things that you need to do, like you have to eat, you have to have food, you have to wash, exercise if you want to exercise, you got to relax a little bit, maybe before you go to bed, all these things. 6 hours or something gets taken up just by that stuff alone. We've got shopping in there, all these other things. So maybe you're left with maybe like 8 hours a day to do what you want to do. And most people, they'll have a job. So they'll go to their job, they'll come home, they'll travel there if they have to travel, and then they do this stuff and they go to bed. That's kind of how most people's lives look. If you're job searching right now, especially if you're a student or a graduate, you might have all of this time free to job search. It might be maybe like 8 hours, 10 hours a day, but you might also be working a part-time job. So if you're working a part-time job, you might even have less than that. You might only have like 2 or 3 hours a day where you're job searching, right? Just here. Obviously, if you're not working part-time, you've got more hours in the day. So why am I showing you this? Let me explain something really quickly and it will all make sense. So where you are now is this little circle. And where you want to be is down here, which is getting your dream job, right? And to get from here to here, it's quite simple. All you need is you need interviews, and then you need to convert interviews. There are other ways to get jobs, but most of the time you kind of need interviews or some form of conversation with a decision maker, whether it's a video call or over coffee or in the office. And typically, like if you have 5 or 10 of these, you're pretty damn likely to get a job. Mostly with our clients, they only need 2 or 3 interviews to get a job. The issue is a lot of people are stuck right here. They're stuck between here and getting interviews. They're applying online, they're doing all these things, they're doing projects, blah, 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 certifications, doing uni, and they're still struggling to get interviews. Some people, they're fortunate and they can get lots of interviews, but they can't convert them into offers. This is a much better place to be because all you have to do is improve your interviewing skills. So now, why does this matter when it comes to this daily circle of time thing? Well, because if you've only got 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a day to job search, you want to make damn sure that the activities that you do during this time actually get you closer to your dream job. So if you're stuck here, you can't get interviews, you want to make sure the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours that you spend in a day job searching get you interviews. Because if you're spending time on things that don't get you interviews, then you're never going to get the job. And this brings us to this table. Each day with the 3, 4 hours or whatever you have to job search, you want to make sure that it's getting you to where you want to go. So what do I mean by this? Well, let's just hypothetically state you're stuck here. You're really struggling to go from where you are now to getting enough interviews. What you can do is you can get out like a spreadsheet or something and just write down all the potential actions you could take to go from where you are now to getting interviews. I'll give you some examples. So one of them could be maybe you want to like optimize your resume. One of them could be you want to have a like networking strategy on LinkedIn, like a cold messaging strategy that you do every day on LinkedIn. Maybe you want to apply to jobs. Maybe you want to do more projects for your portfolio. So basically just write down all of the actions that you could potentially take today to start getting interviews. The next thing you want to do is you want to put here for you at this stage in your job search, depending on your specific situation, which of these is going to have the highest impact on getting you to where you want to go. So if you want to get interviews because you can't get them, which one of these is going to get you to getting interviews with the most likelihood? Which of these is the most powerful action, the most potent action you can take to get interviews? Let's assume that you've already got a decent resume, right? And you've already got one interview before, and you've had your resume reviewed and you know your resume is good. If that's the case, optimizing your resume probably isn't a good use of time, right? Like it's probably like a 2 out of 10 use of time if you already have got it checked and you already know it's good. On the other hand, if you don't even have a resume, it's probably like a 10 out of 10, because if you don't have a resume, it's really hard to get jobs. Ideally, you have a resume, because even if you network with people, they're going to ask you for a resume usually. So it depends on where you're at. Let's just assume you've already got a resume and it's good, right? This is probably like a 2 out of 10, because that's not really going to get you more interviews. Just continuing to optimize your resume. If you've got a pretty damn good resume, 7 or 8 out of 10, great, move on. Cold messaging on networking strategy. Now, if you are a good candidate for the roles that you want to go for, and you've got a great resume and LinkedIn and all that set up, then having a really good networking strategy, in my opinion, this is like a 10 out of 10 impact. Because if you go and cold message people correctly, you will get interviews if you play your cards right. It's crazy powerful. But if you don't have a resume, your LinkedIn's crap, and you don't even know what jobs you're going for, and you don't know which jobs you're a good fit for even, then you probably, this probably isn't going to have the most impact yet. This is going to be like a low impact. And doing all this other stuff is going to have a high impact. But once you've done that basic stuff and you're ready to go and get interviews, then this is like a 10 in my opinion. Applying to jobs, in my experience, and this is different for everyone, I think applying to jobs is powerful. It can be probably like an 8 in terms of potency. I think cold messaging is much more powerful given what I see with clients and what I've seen myself. But it's decently powerful. And again, if you're in your situation, you realize, when I network, actually it's not that effective, but whenever I apply, I seem to get interviews, then this would be a 10 for you. If this isn't set in stone, you got to look at this each day and think, what are the actions I can take and what are the impacts of each action for me right now based on what I understand. Updating your portfolio. So say you're a software developer, a web developer, a UX UI designer, and you've been told it's important to have a good portfolio. That is true. However, if your portfolio is already filled to the brim and awesome, this is probably pointless. Your job now is to just get interviews. On the other hand, if you have no portfolio, this might be a 10 because you kind of want a portfolio or at least one project to show that you can do what you're doing. It really depends on your situation. I'm going to assume you've already got a good resume and your LinkedIn's good and your portfolio is decent. So doing additional portfolio work potentially might not add that much value. I find a lot of students and grads, they focus too much on this, but they never actually do what's necessary to get interviews, which means they don't get results because they're spending too much time on this. This is just an example. It's not set in stone. It's up to you to decide all the actions you could take, all the potential impacts of these actions at this current point in time for you. Now, the next thing you want to do, so let's put time efficiency. So we want to look at this and think which of these is time efficient and which isn't time efficient, because there might be an action you could do that's high impact but would take 10 years. But you don't want it to take 10 years. You want a high impact action that takes the fewest amount of hours to get the result. So optimizing your resume, I'd say out of 10, that's probably not that time efficient. It's probably 5. It takes a bit of time. Cold messaging is probably 7 out of 10 time efficient, because once you get the right kind of strategy going, it's not that much effort compared to applications, which are probably a 3 on time efficiency, because it takes a long time to apply to a job properly. It takes a lot of research. Ideally, you're messaging people. Ideally, you've tailored your resume. All these things takes time. So this isn't very time efficient. Portfolio, again, this probably isn't very time efficient either. So you want to look at all the potential actions, how impactful is each one, and how time efficient is each one. Then what you want to do, you want to add both of these numbers up. So this one, 2 plus 5, that's a 7 for you right now. This one's an 11, and this one's a 5, right? And the cold messaging strategy, that comes out top for me because I'm assuming that you've already got everything in place. You've got your resume in place, your LinkedIn in place, your portfolio in place, everything's in place, and you just need to get interviews. And cold messaging is the most efficient way, in my experience, to get interviews. So that's why it's 17 out of 20, whereas building on your portfolio is only 5 out of 20. Based on this analysis, this is the number one action item This is the number 2 action item. This is the number 3 action item. This is the number 4. So now the final point I want to make here is we are human. Humans can only work on one thing at a time. We're not like AI where we can work on 10 things at once. We can focus on one thing at a time and we can get that done. Once we've done that, we can move on to the next thing, right? Then we move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So if we can only do one thing at a time, we only want to do the best possible thing, right? The thing that's going to get us closest to our goal of, say, getting interviews, and the thing that is going to get us there in the shortest amount of time. So we want to figure out what's that one thing. In this specific scenario, it's this. And we just want to do that. That's it. Because if you do this for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, it's going to get you the most quickly and the most efficiently to getting more interviews. Imagine instead you go and you just spend your whole week building your portfolio out, even though it's already good enough. This is a very bad use of time. You're wasting time, money, and you're not going to get to your goal, or it's going to take forever. So in summary, you only have 24 hours in a day. You only have even smaller number of hours to focus on job searching. So with those hours, you want to make sure that you're getting to where you want to go as efficiently and effectively as possible. If your issue is getting interviews, figure out all the potential things you could do to get interviews. At this point in time for you, write them down, write out how powerful are they? How likely are they going to get you there? How time efficient are they? Just focus on the thing that's going to get you there quickest with the highest likelihood and is the most time efficient. Do that thing and just absolutely hammer that thing, because there's only one thing you can do at once. Hammer that thing. Once you've done that, if you've exhausted that, then move to the second most powerful thing and keep going. There's no point spending all your time doing actions that don't get you to where you want to go.